I am scared of my girlfriend. At first, I did not know why, but there had always been something off about her. I seemed to be the only one who noticed this, though. First time I noticed it was at a local winter carnival. We were on a ride, enjoying our time together and having fun. She was acting kind of distant, but I just shrugged it off as nothing. At this game, where you had to throw a ball at some plates to break them, I won a pretty big teddy bear after breaking 5 of them. I smiled and gave it to her. I said something along the lines of, "For the most amazing girl in the universe," and handed over the enormous stuffed animal. What threw me off at first was that she just took it and said nothing, not even looking at me. It kind of upset me, but I did not want to make it awkward or something by asking about it. The weirdest part, though, was that a few minutes after I had given it to her, and we had started walking to the next ride, she looked up at me and said, "Thank you," in this over-enthusiastic voice, and smiled widely at me. The second time was at a family dinner between both our families. Our families were chatting happily back and forth about things like when me and my girlfriend would get married, or when we'd decide to adopt a child, and so on. Almost everyone were laughing and making jokes, including me. I'm not the most sociable type, but if I feel comfortable with the people I'm talking to, I'll be almost as outgoing as an extrovert. But my girlfriend was not laughing or making jokes as she usually would, being the social one in our relationship. She was just staring at the plate and had barely touched the food, even though she had always liked the food I would cook. She had not said a word since the beginning of this dinner, and it was kind of worrying me. I leaned over to my mom and whispered, "Do you think Rose is acting weird?" My mom looked at me like I had just said the most ridiculous thing in the world. "What? No, not at all." After she said that, she turned back and started chatting with the others again. My mom did not even mention what I had said to the others. I could have sworn my girlfriend had looked at me while I had been talking to my mom, but when I turned my head to check if she was still looking, she was happily talking to the others too. Again, I did not think much of it, until recently. It's been worse recently. She's been talking less, and I've felt like I was being watched almost everywhere. At work, with friends, even while shopping for groceries. Each time I turned around to check, there would be nothing. I've also been waking up with these bruises and small red marks. I just figured that perhaps it was because I was clumsy, and that I had just walked into something throughout the day without noticing. But the more I think about it, the more ridiculous that idea sounds. My hair has not been growing for the past couple of years, which is odd, but I just came to the conclusion that my hair could not grow longer than that. You probably think I'm just paranoid, but I know I'm not paranoid. I knew there was something up. Today, after returning from work, I yelled out her name to check if she was home. No answer. I figured she was out with friends or running some errands. I took off my shoes, threw my keys on the table, and hung my jacket on the coat rack. When I stepped out into the main hall, I could feel a cold breeze that sends shivers up my spine. I quickly checked the house for open windows, but there was nothing. Maybe we had just forgotten to turn on the thermostat or something. It was quite cold outside after all. I checked the entire house again just to be sure, but this time when I walked by the basement door in the back of the house, I could feel the cold air on my feet. It came from the basement. This was weird, though, since we rarely went down there. And by rarely, I mean never. The only time I've ever been down there was when we moved into the house and we had some moving boxes we did not want to get rid of. The basement door was always locked, so it shocked me that when I put my hand on the doorknob and turned, the door clicked and opened slightly. Confused, I carefully opened the door completely. It was dark, and I could only see the stairs leading down into the blackness of the basement. I started walking slowly, keeping close to the wall. It felt like I had been walking for quite a while when I suddenly could feel the cold concrete floor beneath my feet. I fumbled for the light switch on the wall and pressed it when I found it. A single light bulb in the middle of the room lit up, but I still could not see where the cold air was coming from. I stepped away from the wall and walked over to the light bulb. It flickered sometimes, and it had that well-known humming sound that old light bulbs have. When my eyes had gotten a bit used to the dim light, I looked around and could make out some of the shapes that seemed to be boxes, an old closet, a broken chair, and the giant teddy bear I had given to her at the winter carnival a couple of years ago. It kind of surprised me, and maybe also made me a bit sad or disappointed that she had just put it down here to get dusty and eventually break after enough rats had crawled on it or enough insects had chosen it as their home. At this point, I had forgotten why I was even down here in the first place. It was pretty close, so I did not have to walk a lot closer to it to be able to see it. I still hadn't gotten completely used to the lack of light, but I was close enough to touch it, and I could see the silhouette of its head. I reached out to touch it, and I expected it to be dusty and gross. But when my fingers touched the bear's stomach, it was soft. Softer than I remember. Almost as soft as real hair or fur. I felt around on the bear to check if it was the entire teddy that felt like this. When my fingers got to where the arm was supposed to be attached, I felt something. Something both chunky, sticky, and a bit wet. I looked down at my hands to see red clumps of some dried red stuff that I, in that moment of surprise, could not figure out what was. "What the fuck?" I quietly said out loud. My eyes had gotten completely used to the bad lighting now, and I looked back at the big teddy bear. I don't know how I did not see this the first time I looked at it. "What the fuck?" I said, even louder than before. A paper with a picture of my face was messily taped onto the face of the poor stuffed animal with duct tape. Both its arms and legs had been amputated, and a liquid, which I now assume is blood, was smeared over the places where the arms and legs had previously been. Startled, I stepped backwards and tripped on a chair leg that had been laying on the ground. I fell backwards, but was saved by the huge amount of boxes that had been standing there. I stood up again, shaking. I looked back at the now broken boxes with all the contents on the floor. Holy fucking hell. Hundreds or even thousands of pictures of me were laying on the ground. I was in disbelief. It was me doing casual stuff like talking to friends or going grocery shopping. My hands were shaking, and I was fumbling to find my phone. I first checked my front pockets, then back pockets. Thank God it was in the back right pocket. I could feel my adrenaline rushing. I only had so much time to call the police before she came home. I heard our main door creak open, and a familiar voice shout, "Emily?" I had to hide. I looked around and saw the closet. "Emily, where are you?" she continued. I opened the closet door and crawled in behind all the old coats and shirts hanging in there. "It smells like dust and mothballs in here." "I know you're home." I could hear her heels clicking on the floor. She never took her shoes off when she went inside, even when I asked her to. "I'm still sitting in the closet right now. I'm terrified that if I call the police, she'll hear me. I think I've been here for over half an hour. She's been shouting for me to come out, and I can hear all our doors being slammed shut one by one. I think she's looking for me. I forgot to close the basement door before I went down here, so sooner or later she'll know that I know." I just heard the basement door shut. The sound of her heels on the stairs are echoing through our basement. I'm really fucking scared. I don't want to die. She was walking around before, but the sound of her heels just stopped. She knows where I am sure.
My boyfriend chose his clingy female friend over me. My boyfriend and I have been together since my junior year of high school. Our relationship started off great. He's the sweetest and most intelligent person I know. Recently, though, we've run into some problems regarding his friendship with this girl. I want to clarify that I absolutely don't mind my boyfriend having female friends. He has a couple of amazing female friends with who I have become very close friends in high school. This girl, however, is different. She's the girlfriend of my boyfriend's roommate. She spends a lot of time with my boyfriend. She even comes over when her own boyfriend isn't there and just hangs out with my boyfriend alone. In my opinion, this kind of makes her come off as clingy, but this is not exactly the reason why I don't like her. My boyfriend told me that she asked a lot of questions about me and wanted to meet me. You could imagine I was surprised when she made a snide remark about my appearance as soon as she saw me. What surprised me the most was the fact that my boyfriend didn't stick up for me. I have always been very insecure about my looks, and my boyfriend was aware of that. I felt tears welling up and excused myself to go to the bathroom. When I came back, my boyfriend could tell that I had been crying and asked if everything was all right. I told him everything was okay simply because I didn't want to ruin his night. A couple of days later, I brought up the whole situation to him. I explained to him that her comment towards me was hurtful and that I didn't feel comfortable with her coming over and hanging out with him when her boyfriend wasn't there. He tried to brush everything off and told me that she didn't mean to come off as disrespectful and that I didn't need to worry about her. I told him I was still uncomfortable with the whole situation and didn't like her, but he asked me to give her another chance. I realized that he wouldn't stop defending her, so I left it at that. We called it a night, and we both went to sleep like nothing happened, but I was still feeling sad. Mainly because this showed, he cared more about defending her than listening to me, his girlfriend. Fast forward to today. He called me up this morning to ask if I wanted to have lunch with him and his friends. I asked who would be there, and he named a number of people, including that girl. I told him I didn't want to go because I didn't like her. My boyfriend lashed out at me, calling me a bitch because he had already heard that I didn't like her, and he didn't want to hear it again. We got into a very heated argument because of this. I haven't heard from him all day, and I'm scared I might have messed up. Am I really in the wrong?
My brother returned after going missing for 4 years. If he really came back, I'm in huge danger. 4 years ago, my older brother went missing. There was nothing to prompt it. At 24, he was a good guy. He got top marks in school and uni, stayed clean, was very well built, and had only one girlfriend who he was still dating up until the time he went missing. I say good because he was horrible to me. And being a pathological liar and a master at manipulation, he got away with practically torturing me for years. He was 10 years older than me, and it never stopped. I got seriously injured from him up until the day he went missing. He always told me he hated me and enjoyed every bud of pain he put me through. I tried telling people when I was younger, but everyone believed him. Never me. Eventually, I stopped trying. The day he went missing was the greatest and most satisfying day I ever lived. My brother returned after going missing for 4 years. If he really came back, I'm in huge danger. His car was still parked in the driveway, his wallet and phone were on his desk, and his keys in the bowl by the entrance. Police had very little to go off of. It was like he simply vanished. After a year or so, everyone but my mom gave up on the search for him, figuring him to be dead. She, like any good mother, remained hopeful. Everyone else knew better. I knew better. He showed up early in the morning, dropped off by a mysterious black sedan with tinted windows in front of the house, according to our CCTV. We couldn't catch the license plate and had no idea where the car came from or where it went. My brother came out in the same clothes he went missing in, obviously well-nourished and with his clothes clean, save for an old blackened stain on his chest, which people assumed was from the chili he ate the morning he went missing, and dirt on his shoes. The huge mystery came when he knew absolutely nothing. His memory cut the day he went missing and resumed the second he stepped out of the cab of the car. He thought he was still 24, and honestly, he could have been. A time skip was not one of the more outlandish theories the town had, considering everyone seemed to nod in agreement to aliens. Of course, his room was the same. My mom made sure no one touched it when he left for uni, and when he came back and then went missing, she did the same thing. She was so convinced that he would return that she allowed no one to move anything. She was devastated and heartbroken, so my dad and I just went along with it. The first night he came back, he spent it in the house. My brother returned after going missing for 4 years. If he really came back, I'm in huge danger. I've always had my fun with you, but never got to finish the job, you little shit. I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night to him standing at the foot of my bed. He was looking down at me, with a huge grin on his face. Literally, it was a huge grin, curling, way too unnaturally, and twice as large as a normal mouth, as if the corners were cut open with a razor. My lamp was knocked over by my door and was under him, leaving a light shining up towards him, creating shadows going upward on his face, leaving black areas between his eyebrows and cheekbones for both eyes. The eyes. Although they were in void, the eyes were still visible somehow. It was as if they were emitting a soft light underneath the surface. They were glassy and glazed over, completely lacking blood and life. He was still wearing the same shirt and pants he went missing in, and the stain on his shirt looked menacing in the light. It looked oozing, pulsing, crawling, as if filled with worms and maggots. His hands and arms were at his sides, swayingly gently with rage. In his right hand was a knife that looked sickly familiar. I knew that knife all too well. He moved his arm to hold the knife above his head. He lunged toward me from the end of the bed, before I could form any words or sights for help in my mouth, and just as the knife was about to plunge into my chest, I woke up. I jolted in my bed, sitting upright, blood pumping with icy cold liquid coming from a heart frozen in terror. I felt cold and hot at the same time, feeling nauseous and shaking everywhere. I began to feel bile forming in my throat, so I moved my feet to the side of my bed to go to the bathroom. That's when I noticed it. There was that knife, laying on the floor, and the lamp, at the foot of my bed. At this point, I run to the bathroom and to do my business. After I'm done, I'm still shaking, so I splash my face with cool water. It seems to do the trick for a little, so I head back to my bed. The door was closed, which was wrong since I left it open to go to the bathroom, using the light from my room to navigate the hall. I walk in to see him back in my room, this time sitting on my desk chair next to my bed, twirling the same knife on his fingertip. My brother returned after going missing for 4 years. If he really came back, I'm in huge danger. I stood there, still frozen before the fight or flight response kicked in. I was going to kill you, the night I went missing, he said, with that same unnatural grin on his face, with way too many teeth. But obviously, you knew that. Now the response kicked in. I hightailed it out of there and slammed the door shut behind me to buy me some time, as I heard something inside the room shuffle to its feet. I bolted down the stairs to the front door, ready to grab my keys and spend the night anywhere else but where he was. As I put my hand in the bowl, I felt lifeless cold hand already there. "Looking for these, you little shit?" he asked slyly. He was dangling the keys in front of me, and I was briefly left wondering, how the fuck did he get here before me? How the fuck is he even here? The thought took only a nanosecond before I ran for the back door, prepared to make the journey on foot. I pushed out of the door and started to run for the woods. Yeah, I know that's a horror cliche, but it's what I did. I heard the door open behind me and knew he was close on my heels. I felt the familiar déjà vu feeling as I realized the events were almost exactly the same as the night he went missing. He chased me then, too. He didn't have a knife then, though. He thought his fists would be enough. He was wrong. As soon as I stepped into the boundary of the woods where the fateful event occurred, I turned around to see that he wasn't chasing me anymore. Instead, the knife lay on the grass in a pool of blood right outside of the woods. My brother returned after going missing for 4 years. If he really came back, I'm in huge danger. Because that night, I had the knife, and I finished the job.
My wife begged me to sleep with other women. Now she wants a divorce because I took her seriously. My 15-year marriage has been difficult. In some ways, we work well as a couple, and we have great kids. but there's been emotional drama, and our intimate life has been mild for a long time. My wife almost never initiates intimacy, and usually rebuffs my attempts. We are intimate monthly, give or take. A year and a half ago, out of nowhere, she said that I could sleep with other people. It was totally unexpected and unprompted, and I was shocked. And she really pushed it, like, really, I mean it, you can. I responded that I didn't want to sleep with anyone but her, and we dropped it. Then, 6 weeks ago, she said it again and really pushed it. Again, I was surprised and said that I didn't want to sleep with anyone else. But the second time I said that it wasn't really true. The truth is that when she first offered that I could sleep with other people, it unlocked something in me. I started thinking of other women as potential intimate partners, and thinking a lot more about intimacy. And recently, I made a friend, Anne. We were part of a local interest group, and then we started meeting one-on-one every week. I told my wife about her, and that we were friends. But it became increasingly clear that Anne was interested in me as more than a friend. Last week, Anne came right out and said that she'd sleep with me if I wanted. I told Anne that I was attracted to her, but that I was married and I cared about my family. But also that my wife had said I could sleep with other people. That I didn't understand why my wife said it, and that I'd talk to my wife about whether she really meant it. A few days later, I had the conversation with my wife. It went poorly. I told her that I loved her, loved sleeping with her, and wouldn't put our marriage at risk, but also that I was thinking of taking her up on the sleeping with other people thing, if she was really okay with it. And I told her about Anne's proposition. My wife was deeply hurt. She thinks I betrayed her by building a relationship with another woman, and she doesn't think I had her permission to do that. She says that the first time she offered that I could sleep around, she actually wanted to sleep with someone else and was testing the waters. When she repeated the offer 6 weeks ago, she says our relationship was in a completely different place from where it is today, and she thought that offering me intimacy with other people was the only way to save our marriage. I did not believe this. In both cases, since I had told her that I wasn't interested in other intimate partners, she thinks the offer was dead, and I was wrong to think it could still be on the table. I never kissed Anne, never said I loved her, never even held her hand, and I've now told her that we need to remain just friends. I think my wife gave me permission to sleep around and that I went above and beyond by talking to her instead of taking her up on it, but she thinks I betrayed her, and she's now saying she wants a divorce. Then my wife revealed a shocking secret. Anne wasn't really interested in you. I hired her to test your loyalty. I stared at my wife in stunned silence. She continued. My wife went on. I realized it was wrong of me, but I needed to know if our marriage was worth saving. The fact that you built a close friendship with Anne and admitted being attracted to her showed me you couldn't be trusted. I'm sorry it came to this. I stormed out of the house, got in my car, and drove aimlessly as a storm of emotions raged within me. Hurt, anger, and disbelief. The next day, I told my wife I also wanted a divorce. I couldn't move past her deception no matter how remorseful she seemed. Our foundation of trust had been broken beyond repair.